this. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik just won her fourth term and is part of the growing number of Republican women making big gains in the House this year. Congresswoman is joining us now, Elise Stefanik. Good to see you, Congresswoman. Thanks so much. Congratulations on your win, by the way. I want to talk about that. Before I get to that, I just want to get your thoughts on yesterday's proceedings in Arizona. You saw the attorneys there for President Trump. Where do you stand with this? Do you support this continued effort by the Trump campaign?
I support the continued effort by the Trump campaign to make sure that every legal ballot and only legal ballots and legal votes are counted. There's a number of court cases pending from states like Wisconsin to Pennsylvania to Georgia, and it's important that the American people continue to have faith in our electoral process. And this is also highlighting the need to clean up our elections and our voter rolls and our absentee ballot processes for the future to make sure that we have safe, secure, and ballot integrity. So I do support the Trump campaign and the president's efforts to make sure that every legal ballot and only legal votes are counted.
Well, there are a lot of folks out there that agree with you. In fact, 74 million, if you want to be specific. And one of the biggest challenges, as you know, if you've been paying attention here, is Georgia. Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger saying now that Trump supporters are being misled. Watch.
There are those who are exploiting the emotions of many Trump supporters with fantastic claims, half-truths, misinformation, and frankly, they are misleading the president as well, apparently.
So the issue here again, the Trump campaign possibly pushing for another audit in that state. So that saga in that state continues. Raffensperger making his point there. But again, there are irregularities that we have seen. There are pieces of evidence that the attorneys have shown in these hearings. At what point, which one do you believe? It's kind of tough to wade through. Your thoughts?
When you're talking about a razor-thin margin in key states like Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona, we need to make sure that every vote is counted, but we also need to highlight any of the irregularities. I've had concerns about the software, the fact that Dominion software, and it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats who have raised issues about that process and making sure that we have the integrity in the counting process. I also have concerns about the universal mail-in ballots and making sure that we have signature checks when it comes to absentees. There are examples of people who are dead casting ballots. You can look no further than upstate New York. There's a congressional race that is hanging in the balance with about a dozen votes, with hundreds of ballots under question and under challenges right now. And there are dead people who have cast votes right there. So I do think it is important when an election with a historic number of voters, frankly, for both the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, and for President Trump's reelection, we need to make sure that the American people have faith in this electoral process and that we play out this legal process to make sure that we're counting the legal votes.
And Congresswoman, through this entire election process, I'm sure you've heard the media push that there would be a blue wave. That did not happen. Instead, there was a red wave that took place in the House. Why do you think we're not hearing more about that?
Well, certainly there was a red wave, and certainly the media completely missed the boat on this election cycle. But that's not a surprise to me. The media has become increasingly out of touch with mainstream America. Every time I go home to my district, which is all the time, every weekend, I can see the growing divide between the mainstream media, which is focused on New York City, Washington, D.C., and L.A., and really ignores the rest of the country. Pollsters also got this election wrong. They undercounted President Trump voters, they undercounted Republican voters, and they also didn't take into consideration the energy and the enthusiasm of Republican voters who turned out to vote in droves. I also think the media continues to give their glowing coverage of Democrats and Nancy Pelosi's leadership, when in reality, the American people dismissed and chose a different approach. I think it's really interesting that of the 27 toss-up races by the Cook Political Report, Republicans won every single one of those races. This is really, this is the American people passing judgment that they do not support Nancy Pelosi's leadership in the House, which is why her margin is now razor thin. But it's not surprising to me that the media is not covering the historic election of Republicans. They're also not covering the amazing number of Republican women who have
Sure.
led the effort to flip these seats. I am waiting for the cover of Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, Vogue magazine to feature these incredible Republican women who broke glass ceilings and are elected to Congress.
Well, let me show you the cover of Newsmax magazine here, discussing term limits. You can see there Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell. By the way, for viewers at home, if you're not recognizing, I believe our staff aged them to show you this. America needs term limits. A lot of folks agree with this. There was a recent Zogby poll talking about this very thing, where 84% support congressional term limits here. Only 8% oppose this. And it brings me to my next point here. We're still waiting on a COVID-19 relief package for so many people, men and women out there, so many Americans that need that help going through this whole thing. Small businesses still need that help, still need that support. Where has that been, and who's to blame for that?
Speaker Pelosi is to blame for that. She played politics, and she withheld and walked away from COVID negotiations thinking that would strengthen her hand going into Election Day. Well, she lost, and the American people saw right through her partisanship and her far-left progressive ranks, which make up the Democratic majority. We need a COVID relief bill. I am working with Leader McConnell in the Senate and my colleagues in the House to continue to up the pressure on Nancy Pelosi to get back to the table. Small businesses need additional relief, particularly as we're heading into the holiday season. In addition, our schools need direct federal aid to make sure that students are able to learn in person. Had we moved the Senate bill, it would have been signed into law by now. But yet again, Speaker Pelosi, who's controlled by the far-left progressives, the Squad, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar, chose not to work with the Senate, work with Republicans to deliver that package. I am optimistic we can get something done, but we're going to have to ensure that Speaker Pelosi gets to the table and she negotiates in good faith, which she has failed to do for the past few months. And the people that are suffering are the American people. And I think that was one of the outcomes in this November election, is that it was a dismissal and an outright objection to her failed leadership as Speaker of the House. And when it comes to term limits, I'm glad you highlighted the fact that Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer have been in leadership. Frankly, they've been in office since I was born. So you're talking about this new generation of Republican leadership. Our leadership is a generation younger than Nancy Pelosi in the House. Those Democrats are woefully out of touch with all hardworking Americans.
Congresswoman, do you believe President Trump won this election?
I believe it is very important to make sure that every legal ballot is counted. I believe we need to play out the legal case. And as the president said, if the Electoral College and the vote is certified for Joe Biden, he will ensure a smooth transition. But the American people deserve to know that there is integrity and ballot security, and that in these key states with very thin margins, that we ensure that only the legal ballots are counted.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, always great to see you. Congratulations on your win, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.